Thank you for coming to tonight's program with Joan Baez. One of the most beloved singers of our time. Music podcaster extraordinaire Justin Richmond will elicit stories from Joan about what she's done in the music world, in literary arts, and of course, in social justice movements over the years. And before I go any further, I want to add that we're in strange and difficult times, so please listen. This is a Joan Baez evening full of peaceful and loving people. I saw all of you come in, but I need to say that Writer's Block is and has always been committed to civil and respectful discourse. So public disruptions are affronts to expression and affronts to all of us here. So while we're committed to ensuring our events are free of disruptions, if we see any behavior that we think makes our guests feel unsafe in any way, we retain the right to remove offenders from this space. How's that for an uplifting message, guys? Thank you for abiding by this code of conduct. Now for tonight. Joan Baez propelled a country into action. She ignited so many movements for social good, for peace, for justice, prison reform, for women, and more. I think she needs to start again. And she did it through the sheer power of that voice, that magnificent voice. That Joan Baez voice commands us to stop and listen, and at the same time, to stop and think and shake off our complacency. Joan has just published her first book of poetry called When You See My Mother, Ask Her to Dance. And these poems will also make you sit up and think. These aren't her first or only poems, of course. If you've ever heard Diamonds and Rust, for example, you know that she's already accomplished in cranking out moving poems set to the most gorgeous music. In this collection, we read a wide array of entries that fill us in on a private life of someone who's been so present in all of ours. We catch a glimpse of family relationships and interesting friends she's been close to, such as Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix, and Judy Collins, and more. I love the hope that she conveys, the optimism inherent in her lines. There are poems in here that made me sigh with relief, that made me feel relief. Justin Richmond knows his way around music, songwriters, and art. He's the co-host with Malcolm Gladwell, New York Times editor Bruce Headlam, and Def Jam co-founder Rick Rubin of the popular podcast Broken Records. He's also the creator of the podcast Started from the Bottom. He used to produce and report for NPR's All Things Considered. So here's what's going to happen tonight. Joan and Justin will chat. When they're through, Justin will ask Joan some of the questions you sent in via email. Joan has pre-signed a slew of books that are in the lobby. And in addition to When You See My Mother, Ask Her to Dance, Joan has signed copies of her book of drawings called Am I Pretty When I Fly? It's graduation time. It's Father's Day. It just was Mother's Day. And you're all here. You should really get these books because it's Joan Baez, people, and she signed these books. So they're not concert programs from 1970. They're really great poetry books. So I really want to welcome Justin Richmond and Joan Baez.
We go back. Joan Baez, everybody.
Thank you, thank you.
Never get tired of it. I never
Yeah,
get
but
tired.
where'd my book go? Do you have my book?
Oh, I think
No, I think
Alan,
I got
do you have
one with
that?
the little scrapings in it. Okay, well, while we're talking,
right here,
somebody.
right here. You have it. Yep.
Thank you.
It's the
Okay,
first stop
thanks.
of the tour. We're working the kinks out, but you know. It's so, I mean,
You like it?
I love it. I love it. I love it so much I brought two versions. I grew attached to my paperback copy. I was sent the hardback. Before we get to the collection proper, though, maybe we can talk a bit about the era that these poems come from. I think the start of this all is 1990. So maybe you can just take us back to your life at that time. And
Yeah, my life got very interesting at that point. So I entered a deep therapy and deal with early childhood issues and was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. I thought it was an order. And this literally began discovering entities within myself. And as things rolled along, and I did drawing and painting and poetry and glass breaking and whatever it was going to take to break through stuff to get to my issues. The poetry started pouring out. And I would credit to Gabrielle Rico, who's a poet and wrote a book called Writing the Natural Way, and that was my education, was this book. Gave me techniques that brought the stuff up and out, and some of the poems were literally written by somebody else in here, and they're acknowledged in the book. That was either a short or long answer, I'm not sure, but that was the genesis of all of the poems. They were all written between 91 and about 98, and then when I decided to make a book out of it, took a year to edit those, but they were all over the house and in the garage and in the storage units, and collected them and found almost everything I could remember, plus, and had the good fortune to run into Godine Press, and they worked with me to make a little poetry book out of it.
well, so you mentioned Gabrielle Rico being someone who helped you develop some techniques for the writing that went into these. But you obviously, I mean, I think everyone here saw the documentary, the great documentary that just came out about your life. It was phenomenal. You'd obviously written many lyrics prior to this. How does the writing in here from this period differ from what maybe came before?
I'm not sure what all came before, but this was the first clump of things I would say was worth thinking about. And then it'll be interesting to see what I can write without the assistance of the inner beings who were so influential in the writing. I think it'd be a different kind of writing now. I mean, I accept it as a challenge, and I give great thanks and acknowledgement to the other folks in here who I feel as though did the writing, or at least heavily influenced what I was trying to write.
So you didn't really continue your poetry writing after this period of 91 to 98?
No.
Oh. Do you remember there ever being a moment was there a conscious moment where you stopped, or did it just trickle off?
I think it probably trickled off. It's kind of what happens now that you bring it up with the songwriting. One day it was that was all I wanted to do, and that was 35 years ago. And then the painting, I just did a whole lot of painting in the studio, sitting there with also acrylics waiting. I don't know when I'll go back in there. I assume I will, because I haven't thrown all the acrylics out. But I do go in and out of, not to mention the music, and the music ending and this other stuff starting. But you had a question about that.
Yeah, well, I guess mentioning all of these multiple disciplines you're working in, whether it's poetry or music or acrylics or your drawings, which we've had a great time talking about before. How do you balance these various mediums? Is it something you like? Do you wait for inspiration to strike and just one morning I'm going to work with?
I just wake up in the morning and see what it's going to be that day. If I'm on a project, like this book was obviously a project that was going to take a lot of time and attention and thought. So that kind of defines my day if I'm in the middle of a project. And it's in between projects that I float around considerably, seeing what speaks to me next. It's sort of like somebody asking me how I choose my songs, and it's really corny, but the song chooses me. So I don't know what's going to, want to be shown when I get up in the morning.
You retired from touring, which I imagine left a lot of room for a lot of different projects. Did you want to fill your time with projects?
I've never known in my life a time that I wasn't doing projects, so I think I didn't think about it. But I do realized that I was sitting in my friend's house this afternoon, and I started writing poetry. I mean, I started a poem. I thought, oh, I'm not going to give myself 5 minutes of breathing time before I go into the next thing, but it's how my life is, and I'm happy with it.
Can you recite any of the poem that you wrote just today?
I recited one for you last time. Let me see if I get it straight. If I don't, you have books there, you can correct me. This is called a piggy trio. This little piggy played the violin. This little piggy played drums. This little piggy played sticks and bells. And this little piggy played none. And the last little piggy ran and ran and ran all the way home, listening to the little trio in his mind, and he got so excited he wet himself, which is where the wee comes from. And soon thereafter, he taught himself to play piccolo and stay dry.
It was like I heard it brand new for the first time. It was delightful. So, tell me, you had this, you wrote in the author's note, you mentioned that this period of time, 91 to 97, 98, you said obsessively. What happened to these writings between 97, 98, and when you started putting these together for Godine?
You mean, what did I do poetically between them?
No, just what happened to these? Did you purposely hang on to them, store them away?
Oh, I never throw anything away. It's anything I've created, I don't throw away. So no, that was an interesting process because they were everywhere. I mean, they were in bureau drawers, they were in a storage unit, and they were under the bed, and they were anywhere. And I asked my assistant to help me find them, and it took months. And I would remember a poem, and I'd think that I had everything. And no, I know there's a poem, and it's on yellow paper, and it's got lines, and it was in pencil. So I sent her out to look for this thing. And it was a long process trying to read. And a lot of it I didn't remember, and I was delighted to find. So, yeah, it was a long process.
Was that the impetus for looking for these, just that you weren't sure what was there?
No, the impetus was that I wanted to make a book out of them, and I would have an inkling of what we hadn't collected already. What about the one about, and then I would see if it would present itself to me, and that one did on the yellow paper with lines written in pencil. Sometimes I remember what angle. It was, when you write and you go, I can off, like that, or some of them went off like that. And now I look back and I think that probably had to do with the different people who were writing. Yeah.
A forensic
exactly.
handwriting detective would have a hard time figuring out what's what and who's who. But luckily, you do. In the, let me pull this up. In the acknowledgments of the book, you name the various voices, or co-authors, as you call them, of some of these titles, some of these poems. Bibi, Yasha, Star, The Raj, Frank, Counselor.
A couple of those are trees.
What was it, how did it feel learning that these multiple people were a part of you?
It was a wonderful experience. I mean, we all right there? It's the elephant's next. It's the elephant on the table, and he's next to it.
Yeah.
How did it feel to which?
Just to learn that you had these multiple.
Well, as I got to, these people would appear, and I love them all. Some multiples have one or two really, really unhappy, mean ones who make their lives a misery. I didn't have that for the most part. I had a couple a little bit dicey, but I loved this family of inner people. I still love them. I wish they were around more. But getting to know them was getting to know my life. It was getting to know why I had phobias and why I didn't sleep at night, because each little entity that comes forth has its story about what the trauma was for it. And that's how I learned about myself and my childhood, was through these folks.
So looking in hindsight, did you realize that these were people that were around for a long time, going back to childhood even?
Yeah, and in hindsight, you figure out a lot of things because most of these inner folks were young. So whenever that trauma took place that this little person is carrying, that was 6 years old, 9 years old, 3 years old, as they present themselves. Oh, this is interesting. This is a lecture on multiple personalities, but that's okay because it's very difficult to explain it or to have people understand it. But I'll assume that you're bright enough to take it in and do what you want with it.
Well, yeah, it is. It's hard to explain, but there's even just this other wrinkle with you, which is that you're creating with these personalities too. Some of us just have them, don't know what to do with them, don't know how to harness them. But you as a beautiful creator of things found a way to. I don't know, was it channeling or?
It was channeling, I'm sure, but it's an interesting moment with my primary therapist when I'm thinking of, well, it turns out that it's maybe a myth, but you got to be miserable in order to create. And in some people, I see that. They gave up alcohol and they didn't really write anything that exciting afterwards. So I was afraid. I said, well, what if I'm like everybody else and I get really healthy and will I still be able to create? And the therapist said, why don't you be the first? Yeah. I said, okay, so I took it as a challenge.
I think that leads really nicely to, on page 21, Goodbye to the Black and White Ball. I don't know if you'd mind reading that for us.
Yeah, this was really very early on. And when I found out that everything was either black or white, there wasn't any gray zone like normal people might have. I used to think the alternative to black and white must be gray. To avoid living a dull life, I dressed in black and white. I thought in black and white, not just good or bad, mind you, but perfect or damned, gifted or worthless, ethereal or demonic, emblazoned or cast out. I scoffed at anything average and avoided the middle ground, the gray area. As a result, I let slip most of my life. I was chronically anxious, insomniac, promiscuous, multiphobic, depressed, hypervigilant, and luckily immensely talented. I had antennae that could turn corners ahead of me to protect me from the mortal danger of, say, eating dinner in a restaurant, making a new friend, the gray area. When I was half a century old, I tore off the antennae and turned my life over to a power greater than myself, which by that point could have been a toothpick. I pitched myself into a sea of memories and headed blindly like a hoodwinked shark for the marrow of the inner core me. I pictured pustules of venom, but my therapist suggested it might be diamonds. For months, I thrashed about, recording dreams, grasping for clues, fighting for my life and the life of my son. When I came up for air from my flailing, I began to see shards of color. Slowly, I began to see I was sanctified and matchless, and I would trade my life for no other. I should not have been shocked to find that a diamond was, in fact, the core of me. I continued to scrape off tenacious parasites. I discovered that sorrow is an ocean, fury is blue, pain is my companion, but love had not been smashed to bits so badly as to not be mendable, like a gypsy violin crushed beneath a Nazi boot. I needed patience and an artisan. My therapists became my artisans. People around me unearthed the gems I had been promised, and held my heart in their cradling hands as I split up into 100 pieces, 100 bright souls, sorting out their places in a dazzling necklace, taking in and reflecting sunlight, working to mend me, to help me survive my deliverance and transcend my survival.
That is such a beautiful piece of writing, and it was the first thing I read from the book. And what immediately struck me, and I was so happy to see illustrated in this, is it's both profound and funny. And I don't know how often people think of you as being funny, but
Profound, I hope.
I think you got that covered. But the humor is such a part of your being, and it was. I just love the mix of both of those throughout the book. It was gorgeous. What?
Well, hang on a second. It's true that I wasn't able to show that in songs. No, to be humorous in a song as easily as in the poetry. So people continue thinking that I'm serious.
Although you did have a lot of fun on stage, in the
That's
performance.
true. At the beginning, I was paralyzed, and I just stood there, and everybody thought, "Oh, she's so peaceful." It's so deep, and she's so peaceful. I was a nervous wreck. I just knew how to cover it up, keep singing.
What drove you? I'm wondering. I know a number of people, maybe a lot of people, who similarly live their life in these stark terms, black and white. It's 100 miles per hour, or they're run to the ground, and it's they need to just stay in bed for a day or a week. It seems to me that those people are people who are driven to something. I don't know what always. It might be different. Do you think that was the case for you? Was this because you felt you had to, that compromising and finding a gray area was not pushing you to somewhere or to something?
I think probably I just had to scoff at normal people because I didn't know what to do. But, I didn't know what to do with somebody else's normal life. So I had to think I was better than it was. Something like that. And at the same time, felt less than. I felt as I wasn't good enough and I wasn't smart enough and all of that. But anyway, I don't know where we were.
No. So yeah, both the defense mechanism and a way to attempt to propel yourself out of mediocrity or this feeling that,
I'm going to learn a lot while we're talking. It's true.
Good. How does it feel? How did it feel to discover this gray area? Did you said earlier you weren't sure whether you could create if you found some sort of middle ground. Did you find that it was okay to not be miserable,
Yeah, that took a while. But you're saying that I in the poem anyway, it went to color before it came to the middle ground, which is interesting to me. Me thinking in black and white never included color anywhere. And then through the process that I was going through in these poems, it was color, and then somehow or other landing, it's okay. In the gray area is okay. And it's surrounded by the necklace. The necklace, and the necklace, obviously the people who were born in here.
I'm learning talking to you. It's an even greater.
You'll be exhausted by the end of a half an hour.
A couple of the poems, like we mentioned, were written by these other people who are a part of you. Yasha gets some love in this book. The Rosy Trumpeter was one written by Yasha. Dear Leonard written co-author,
Yeah,
co-write.
I want to read that one.
Would you? Would you?
Yeah.
That is page 98, Dear Leonard. And this is by both Joan and Yasha.
This is Dear Leonard. It's to Leonard Cohen. Dear Leonard, I remember 1960-something, that filthy hotel in the village, some man throwing up in the phone booth off the lobby, and you, Leonard, my unlikely dinner host. Second all in razor blades, we called you. King of black predictions, harbinger of a scorched earth. Yet, from your canopied dreams did the Sisters of Mercy drift up, lovely and winking, full of folly, and Suzanne, that careless ghost, pure as our young beliefs, beautiful as the new age, daughter of the dawn of Aquarius, an absent-minded seductress hurling tote bags of goodness to the dreamers stuck in line at Woodstock, and to Joan of Arc and Bernadette, and all the other little birds on wires. So much beauty from so much darkness. What a gift. But now I'm thinking of 1993, Leonard, when I listened to your wordless song, Tacoma Trailer, while I sat in a hotel room windowsill in Würzburg, Germany, and watched a snowstorm tear past in horizontal white splendor. As your piano chords filled my chest, I saw, plain as life itself, a tattered little boy appear outside, straining uphill against the storm. He wore tattered shorts, a too small jacket, and ruined shoes. I brought him up with my eyes into the warmth of my room and into the shelter of my arms. From your canopied dreams came this boy who spoke his own lyrics to your melody. And when Yasha wrote this down, it was in a German accent. He didn't speak German, but it was zisses and zats. So I'll do a little bit of that, but not the whole shot. He says, take these silver pools from my eyes. I am ever so young, and my knees are blue from the cold, and my hands are frozen. My name is Yasha. I'm 12 years old. My family was all killed in a Holocaust. My mother, I don't remember, except that she was dark and beautiful. My father, nothing. My sisters and brothers, nothing. We're just part of the way through.
Wow. Did you ever share this with Leonard?
No, I didn't know him that well. We greeted each other, but no.
What was what was your relationship with Leonard?
It was the hotel lobby with a guy puking in a telephone booth. I mean, really, his son, I met his son, and I was joking around. I said, oh, yeah, we call him second all razor blades. And he looked hurt. I said, no, he was a great poet. But the son didn't know that his dad was so depressed and crazy. So you don't want to bring that up with a kid because they don't want to believe it.
I love that. What compelled you to write that? Do you or Yasha? I mean, what? Just given that, beyond your one-to-one relationship with the person, Leonard. I mean, was he a person who loomed large in your imagination as an artist, or?
No, this came about with Yasha. Yasha wrote a lot, so we were trying to figure out how to get it into the book without it's too confusing for people. So we structured this. Writing to Leonard. I had another thing called Suzanne, which is a letter to Leonard, and we put the whole thing together. And that was how I wanted to present Yasha, because his writings were too long. They were too confusing for people. So this was the way to get to know Yasha in little bits and pieces and his beautiful imagery.
I want to go back to something you said earlier in the night, which is that you don't throw anything away, which...
I throw away crap. I throw away...
I don't want to make you have to be a...
I declutter every other week, but I'm talking about drawings and paintings and that.
Yes, yeah, okay, good, fair point. Maybe this invalidates my question then. But you don't... you don't strike me as an overly nostalgic person. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Maybe I am somewhere in there, but for now, I'd rather deal with now. And dipping into the past usually just brings up a lot of nostalgia, and I'd rather be here.
Well, and that's what I wonder. I mean, I think a lot of people who keep things, hold on to them out of some belief that in the future they'll look at it, they'll find some wisdom in it, something that helps them make sense of life, which makes zero sense.
Yeah, and as I am getting older, and I am, I think, why am I keeping my mother's silver tea set? I mean, maybe somebody would like this, but it's gathering dust in the back of this thing where all these precious things are. But who cares? Really, who cares? I don't know if this is connected or not, but my mom used to sit up by the road, and she had this little place she would sit, and her caregivers would bring up tea and stuff and have their tea time by the road. And so one time I said, well, I'll bring the tea up today. And so I had a silver tray and all of her mother's silver stuff on it. It had just been re-silvered. I thought this will be a really nice tea party. So I took it up there with some little cookies and the best teacups I had. And we all had tea party, and it was time to go back down the house. So I said to the caregiver, well, you take Mom down, I'll take the tea stuff. And I'm walking to the house, and over here my mom's wheelchair is going really fast. And I'm thinking, why is the caregiver racing her down the hill? There was no caregiver. Mom had learned how to take the brakes off and fly down that hill because she knew it would get everybody's attention. She did not realize she could kill herself. And so the only thing that slowed her down, we say, Mom, you could kill yourself. Hee hee hee. She'd smile. So we say, do you want to end up looking like Popsy, who was her husband, who was in very bad shape and very bad posture? Do you want to end up looking like? She'd say, oh, and she'd slow down on the loosening of brakes for a couple of weeks. Where this started out, oh yeah, it was the tea set. So while she's rolling past me, I take the silver tea set, the cups, and I hurl them into the garden because I've got to catch my mom as she's heading to her death, right? So what we got is a happy mom, nobody dead, an entirely broken set of glasses, and I don't know where this came from, but anyway.
Well, that's the set you're hanging that's collecting dust in the corner.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we got it out there and heaved it into the hedges.
I mean, so, maybe is it a sentimental thing? That's why you.
What?
Maybe that's the only reason you hang on to it. The sentimental. You remember that day you hurled the. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to.
I think it's because I'm ADD.
Okay.
Is it?
Okay.
Have you ever seen the T-shirt? Great T-shirt for ADD. ADD. I don't have. Oh, look at the squirrel.
Now you all understand why I was talking about the humor. She's very, yeah, of course. We should talk about. I want to talk about. You have a poem in here on page 94 called Jimmy, and you should if you could read that, that'd be great. Because all these years on, Jimmy looms, and at least for me, probably for a lot of other people, as particularly larger than life. It's hard to imagine he was physically here on this earth.
This is Jimi Hendrix, of course. And the story is true, by the way. You performed just before me at the Isle of Wight and somehow lit the stage on fire. I performed in your wake as the aftermath flickered down through the floodlights. I sang, strike another match, go start anew, and look out, the saints are coming through. You were no saint, but you certainly came through. You came through like a magnificent natural disaster, like a fucking volcano. At Woodstock, you eviscerated the national anthem and made it your own. There were no bombs bursting in air or rocket's red glare. There was only your guitar and 400,000 souls electrified in the dawn's early light, out there in the mud, out there in the volcanic ash, and you were only 27 when you died.
That is the odd sort of thing. I mean, as you're watching his performance, before you go on, strike another match, go start anew, look out, the Saints are coming through, and a handful of days later, he's
all of
gone.
that is unconscious. The fact that I chose strike another match, go start anew, it was not planned because the stage was burning down. Afterwards, I read it and I thought, oh, well, that's what happened. Some wires connected up there, and we went from strike another match, or from this stage burning down to strike another match.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Do you remember that performance of Jimmy's?
I do. I didn't see much of it because we were hustling around trying to figure out what to do with me, because I was going on after him, and is there going to be a stage here or not? And literally, yes, I do remember some of it. And I was thinking, why don't you let me end the show? I tried to get them ahead of time because Jimmy was going to get everybody, razzled up. And the anarchists were burning down concession booths because you should never have fences around anything, okay? So this is what was going on out there. I said, Jimmy's just going to make it more so. So, but they put me on, and it was too late. The place was absolutely wild.
So were you seeing burning as you're performing?
I smelled it. I was in my the little whatever you have off stage, whatever they call it. Where's Gabe as a 10-month-old, I think, and his nanny. And I don't know how well you know Christopherson, Chris Christopherson, but
he played there. Yeah.
He snarls at everything. And he popped his head in. I'd never met him before. And there's Gabe in somebody else's arms. And there's me, and he says, "Stage is on fire." I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
That's phenomenal. I love Chris Christopherson.
I do too.
Oh my God, what a great writer as well. Before we move on from Jimmy, there's a great photograph of the two of you. I don't know. I imagine you've seen it at some point.
With a bong.
Well, the image has been enhanced to include a bong. I use enhanced on purpose.
I didn't know whether it had or not when somebody showed it to me. Said, "Do you know Jimi Hendrix?" I said, "I don't think I ever met him." Show me this thing. This big bong, the smoke coming out of it. Yeah, well.
You handed him the bong, the smoke coming out of his mouth.
And I didn't do any of that stuff, so it's just... Well, my son thought that was a very cool picture. He said, "Oh, Mom, finally, she did something cool," I said, "Gabe, it was yeah."
But the original photo is very cool too, nonetheless. You don't remember meeting him that day?
Not that day.
No.
I don't know where the picture with the bong is, but it probably was backstage.
It was.
Yeah.
I looked it up in advance of this. It was August of 1968 at a benefit for the Biafran people, which temporarily separated from Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
You apparently performed, Jimmy did, and you guys are sweetly holding hands backstage, laughing. It's like unbelievable. Yeah. And then the bong. So that just again enhanced the whole thing. But you don't. Okay. I want to ask about you. We don't have to read Judy, but I do want to ask about it while we're talking about some of the people in your life. The poem seems to be you apologizing for not being there for her. And the inference,
Where is it?
Judy is
Just before Jimmy.
just before Jimmy, perhaps. Let me see. I have that written down. I'm trying to.
Where is it?
Just after Jimmy, what Alan is saying. There, let me just look here.
96.
Thank you, page 96.
Thank you. this is what happened backstage. I think it was my concert, and Judy Collins had come to it. And then we met backstage afterwards, and I had never really been close enough friends with her. And this was kind of a wake-up call, and it just says, backstage we embraced. I buried my face in my hands, and the conversation we'd never had tumbled out. It was a long road, you said. Forgive me for never being there, I said. I buried my face in my hands. You buried your son in the ground. He had committed suicide. And she managed to live a very creative life after that and around that, you know, using that as part of her way to survive.
It's hard, I mean, I'm wondering how, I don't know if it was in one of our prior conversations or in the documentary or maybe in the author's note here, but at some point I seem to remember you saying that there was a time in your life you weren't, maybe it was in one of your poems, the time in your life where you weren't really a friend to people, you weren't available to people. And I'm wondering to what degree, I don't know, like, are there more instances of this sort of thing where you regretfully maybe didn't?
Yeah, lots of them. You know, I'm the antithesis of Emmylou Harris, who has 1 billion friends, and she's a good friend to all of them. And I think, how did she do that? You know, and she's lovable, she's likable. I really, really like her. And then I look around, and she's got hundreds of friends. I was on stage with her one time. She was putting on a show, and she says, Emmylou and friends, there are at least 50 people grabbing for the stage. And I just said, Emmy, I'm just jealous. I wish I had as many friends as you have. And so she has an open heart. And I guess I couldn't have that for many years because it's difficult to trust.
She did at some point, she did that trio group with her and Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt. I know there's a whole crowd full of musicologists here. Thank you, everybody. Did you ever consider doing anything of the sort? I mean, getting together with other singers, other people.
No, you know, when you ask that, I think I'm just so Baez-centric and plus protective of myself that I didn't go out there and meet the people and sing with the people that I could have done.
And perhaps the times you did, I mean, I guess with Dylan, that kind of...
Yeah, but he doesn't count as a person, so it's this thing. Did I say that?
Okay, but you do have a painting of him hanging above your piano in your...
That painting that hangs there, whatever I just finished, would hang there for a couple weeks.
Okay.
So, but I love the painting there. It's like this grumpy old man looking down. You know, I call him Old Happy Face. That's the name of that portrait. You know, that's how he was in my house, Old Happy Face.
Okay, so that doesn't live there permanently. Okay, I was wondering how you look at a subhuman above your piano every day, but we digress.
Well, I have a love-hate relationship over my piano, right? Is that what you're saying?
Do you? Yes. Yeah. Well, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I just told you. He's there for 2 weeks, and then we changed to the next painting.
Can we? Would you mind reading "Just Because" on page 132? It's one of my. I think it's my favorite for the moment. 132.
Yeah, this is when my sister Mimi was ill with cancer, and the closer I tried to be to her, the more she'd have to push me away, and I didn't understand that till after she was gone, that probably the proximity was just too much, because we've been really close when we were young, and I think whatever the dynamics were, she couldn't include me in her life at that point. This is called Just Because. Just because you were ill and frail and ice-filled and hated us all didn't mean we would give up on you, little sister. When you'd had enough of Western meds, the hypodermics of poison, the MRIs, the brain fog, the morphine patches and the pretending, we tried potions and crystals, tumor whisperers, praying nuns, homeopathic granules, and telepathic white light. And then Switzerland. We'd heard of miraculous cures from there. On the way to the airport, I tried to give you my most precious prayer beads, but you turned to the window and said, I already have some. Maybe in Switzerland, they would fill your veins with gold and flood your tumors with light and return you to us whole and full of forgiveness. And I saw that when I inched closer to your well-guarded boundaries, my very presence was unbearable to you. We were bonded to one another in love, but the complexities of our lives had left us at each other's mercy, and no place around was there safety to be found. Switzerland sparked hope in you, and the forces in your life that kept you mummified went briefly idle. In your absence, I went off to meditate on a cold hillside with Buddhists, wild turkeys, mad crows, and the full moon. While you were in Switzerland, you could breathe on your own in your small, immaculate room, but the miracle we'd prayed for didn't come, and you were left exhausted. I haven't got this technique down yet.
It's day one of the book tour. It's fine.
It is, yeah, ever. Okay. Back home in the airport, you turned to us, raised your arm in the air, feigning an opera diva, and attempted a triumphant high note. But your voice, weakened by illness, had lost its strength and beauty. The high note stopped prematurely, ending in a little cough that became ragged and spasmodic and didn't bring anything up, but stayed dry as dust. Mimi, my beautiful little sister, you danced with death until you were spent. Its long shadow finally enveloped you and stole you away from those you loved and those you hated. But surely, just because we were clumsy and desperate and in your way, didn't mean you would give up on us.
Yeah, that one rocked me for a couple of days. And I continue to come back to it. It's there's so much in there. There's subtle humor. There's love. There's denial, avoidance. There's acceptance. It's almost a short story, and so there's so much emotion you pack into that. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. That is just absolutely gorgeous. Do you? I hesitated to maybe have you read that because I imagine that must have been a incredibly difficult period in your life. How soon after, in relation to your sister's passing, to Mimi's passing, when was this written?
Well, I can't remember, but it was clearly not during the 90s, that period. There was another piece written about Mimi at that exact same time when she was dying, and it was written by Yasha. And it's, I don't have it here. We didn't print it. But that was the one at that moment that, actually, the Rosy Trumpeteers, it's too long to read, but that also was by Yasha. There was another one by himself, but the Rosy Trumpeteers is, I was staying at Mimi's house when she was dying, and that's what came out, and it really was inspired by Yasha. So that's worth a read, too.
It's a great one. Where, and this, you get into this in the documentary quite a bit too, is, the relationship you had with your sisters was, they were very different relationships. The one with Mimi could be fraught. Any relationship can be. Where have you landed with your relationship with Mimi these now, as you think about her life and your times together? Where?
Yeah. When I saw the film, it jogged my memory. And I thought how difficult it was for me. Well, it was impossible for Mimi. It was impossible. And it was also an impossible position for me, because she wanted me to be honest about her and her music and her career and what did I think. And so I'll always wonder, if I'd said, go for it, Mimi, it'll be fantastic, and yet I was still the shadow over her, would that have been the right thing to do, or was it? I think it was a lose-lose. I don't think I could have said anything that would really make her happy.
Did you guys have any conversations towards the end to that effect, or?
No, we didn't. Mimi liked her stuff, right? So she had all this beautiful jewelry around. And Pauline was decorating the inside of Pauline's coffin, which was actually made out of pine. And I was painting the outside of it, and I would just paint it until she died. And Pauline was decorating the inside with all of Mimi's beautiful jewelry. And so 2 stories about her jewelry. One day Mimi says to all of us around, I'm going to give away all my jewelry. See what you like. And I'd say, she said, well, no. And there was nothing left but this crappy little copper bracelet that'd turn your arm green. And I saw that Mimi was not about to give up that stuff. But at the same time, her really beautiful, big, pardon me, but ivory, clumpy, gorgeous necklace Pauline is tacking into the inside of the coffin, so that when Pauline looks up, that's what she'll see. When Mimi looks up, that's what she'll see. So my mom's watching Pauline decorate the coffin, and my mom's saying, oh, that necklace, oh, that scarf, oh, I liked that one. It all went down with Mimi. It all, it was perfect.
Let's, we'd love to end with Ravenous on 68, a bit of a turn here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be a good place to.
Quoth the raven, I'm ravenous, and he pecked out Edgar Allan's eye.
If only we could walk off like Babe Ruth after that perfect home run. We have some audience questions, so we'll stick around a little longer. I've been given some audience questions. Someone here writes that they believe in the documentary that there was a handful of songs played that weren't released that are maybe in your archives, and do you plan to ever do an archival release? No. You're on a hot streak. Come on. Oh, hold on, the mic.
One with Mimi. Oh, sorry. I did one with Mimi's then husband, Richard Farina, produced this thing, right? It has things like, I just got out my little red book the minute that you said goodbye. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-dum-bum. I mean, it has so nothing to do with me. But those tapes still exist. I'm afraid my manager's going to get his hands on them and want to release that. But now I don't remember the question.
You won't release that one, but will you ever do an archival release of any kind, of like stuff, live stuff, things that maybe demos, things that never made it to an album?
I'm not going to involve myself in that project. I mean, seriously, if somebody comes along, and probably my manager, he has very good ideas and wants to put the time and energy into that, I'll sign it. But I'm not going to go looking for stuff myself.
Can I connect with the manager on that one? I'll take that job. I won't be. The assistant job sounds tough. They're looking for yellow legal paper under beds, but I'll take the archival producer job with your manager. That sounds amazing. Okay, that was shameless. What did
Should be the name of the book.
Okay, speaking of the name of the book, will there be, is there another, you just put out the book of drawings, you have this book of poetry, are there other books of poetry in the
Inside
future?
here? I don't know, we'll see. I mean, as I said earlier, the stuff that was written back then was written in a number of ways, but it was just definitely a time period. So now it's different, and I've written a couple things that I liked. Whether there's a whole book in here, I'm not sure. But after that, I'll probably go back to where I'm staying and start writing poetry again.
Would you ever do an out-and-out biography again?
Oh, look at the squirrel.
Okay, all right. Did coming off the road make this book possible?
Yeah, it did. Coming off the road opened up, this great flood of stuff. And although towards the end I was painting while I was on the bus, I had this little area, it's supposed to be your vanity table, right, with all your tchotchkes there and your powder and lipstick, but mine was covered with acrylic, small acrylic, and little 4x4-inch canvases. And I'd paint like a fiend until it was time to get on the stage, and I'd sing the concert, and I'd get back on the bus and go on painting. So it had begun while I was still on tour.
Were you bored with performing, or just more attracted to the painting?
No, I wasn't bored with performing. There just comes a time when it's right to start. I mean, we talked about it on and off over, for years. I think, is this the moment? And sometimes when the career had a big dip, I thought, yeah, maybe this is the moment, and I think I don't really want to go out like this. So we planned that, we planned that final tour really carefully, and it was the right time. It says in the film, it says it couldn't have been years before or a year after. That was the right time. Yeah.
How's your voice these days? Do you keep it up?
I keep it down. It's very, very low. And I've learned to stop pining about not having a high voice, because I don't. Again, I never will.
You won't get that back.
No. It'd be nice, but you can't get your vocal cords to, wring themselves inside out. They won't do that. But what has happened is I have enjoyed the lower voice. It took me a while, because I was being Joni-centric and wanted my whole range and my achingly pure soprano. Guess what? It goes, So, no, I enjoy the lower voice. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Joan Baez, everybody.